You are listening to Audio SSLC, your audio medium for easy understanding and revision. To download a copy of this recording, please visit audiosslc.com. Non-detail Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Pre-reading activity. Do you remember any story or film based on treasure hunting adventure? Share it in class. Jim Hawkins' father and mother kept the Admiral Benbow Inn, which was the only building in a lonely cove in the west of England. One ice-cold winter's day, a wizened old seaman with a sabre scar across his face arrived at the inn and took a room. His sole possession was an old sea chest, which he guarded as a miser hoards his fortune. Billy, as the old sea dog called himself, told young Jim to keep a weather eye out for a seafaring type with one leg, and gave him a 4-pence piece for his troubles. "'Tis a pity his generosity doesn't run to paying rent," Jim's father grumbled. Jim's father was having trouble making the inn pay, and he was so ill that Jim and his mother feared he would not outlive the winter. During the evenings, Billy would sit in his corner of the bar, drinking rum and singing 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum, while daytime would find him on the rocks, looking nervously out to sea. It was several weeks after Billy's arrival that another mysterious seafaring man appeared, a sallow, evil-looking fellow with 2 fingers missing. He argued with Billy, and in no time the two were fighting furiously. Wounded, the stranger was put to flight, but Billy was left stretched out on the floor, gasping for breath. Dr. Livesey, who had come to treat Jim's ailing father, told Billy he had a stroke. He bled him, put him up to bed, and forbade him any more rum. Billy called Jim to his side. His eyes burned with fever as he spoke. "I must shift before the lubbers gets to me and gives me the black spot." Mystified, Jim asked him to explain. Billy said the black spot was a pirate summons. He had been a member of the notorious Captain Flint's crew, and he was afraid they were coming to do for him and steal his old sea chest. But Jim soon forgot Billy's problems, for later that night the doctor told him that his father had died. The same day that Jim's father was laid to rest, a blind old pirate called Blind Pew came to the Admiral Benbow. Jim unwittingly led him into the bar, where he slapped a circular piece of black paper into Bill's hand before he could avoid him. By the time Blind Pew had taken his leave again, Billy lay gasping on the floor, dying of a massive stroke. His last words were that the pirates would be upon him that same evening. Jim and his mother quickly searched through Billy's precious sea chest. His mother took as much coins as to cover the old pirate's rent, and not a half a penny more, while Jim found an intriguing bundle of papers wrapped in oilcloth, which he pocketed as payment for his services. Alarmed by loud voices, Jim and his mother fled out into the night and hid, as Blind Pew and several pirates arrived and proceeded to ransack the inn. Blind Pew and the pirates were outraged that what they sought from Billy's sea chest had gone missing. Knowing that Jim and his mother could not have gone far, they rushed outside, but before they could find the fugitives, they were ridden down by several horsemen. Jim and his mother saw that their saviors were revenue officers, who had been tipped off that there was a pirate ship moored nearby. The rest of the pirates had escaped, but Blind Pew lay dead on the ground, where he had been knocked down by one of the horses. While his mother was cared for by friends, Jim was taken to Squire Trelawney's house, where Dr. Livesey happened to be dining. The squire and the doctor were local magistrates, and asked to be told all that had happened that evening. When Jim had finished his story, he produced the papers he had taken, adding that he was sure they were what the pirates had been searching for. The two men were in complete agreement, for what they had before them was a treasure map showing where the buccaneer Captain Flint had buried all his booty. Squire Trelawney and Dr. Livesey hurriedly made plans for a voyage to the island where the treasure lay buried. Jim was to be their cabin boy. The squire travelled to Bristol, where he bought a fine schooner called the Hispaniola, as well as hiring a sea captain. The ship's cook was to be a one-legged old sailor called Long John Silver, who had given Squire Trelawney invaluable help in picking the rest of the crew. Jim and the doctor joined the squire in Bristol on the eve of their departure. In Jim's absence, an apprentice was hired to help his mother run the Admiral Benbow. At first, Jim wondered whether Long John Silver was the same one-legged buccaneer that old Billy had been so worried about, but the ship's cook, nicknamed Barbecue, had such a pleasing manner and was so very friendly that he soon forgot all his doubts. When Jim, the doctor, and Squire Trelawney went aboard the Hispaniola the next morning, Captain Smollett demanded an urgent word with them. He said he was unhappy that he had had no hand in choosing his crew, and was unhappier still that everyone knew that they were sailing for treasure. The squire admitted he had been unwise to let slip their secret, and promised he would keep the treasure map hidden from everyone. The Hispaniola set sail on the evening tide, and was soon making excellent progress. The sleek schooner performed admirably, even in heavy seas, and Captain Smollett had to agree that in spite of his misgivings, the crew could not be faulted. Each man went about his duty in good spirits, none more than Long John Silver, with his parrot, Captain Flint, on his shoulder, squawking, "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8." And so the voyage proceeded without a hitch, but there was treachery afoot. Late one evening, as the Hispaniola neared its destination, Jim went looking for an apple to eat, but finding the apple barrel nearly empty, he climbed right into it. While hidden inside it, he overheard a conversation between Long John Silver and the ship's coxswain, in which Silver boasted of his piracy with Captain Flint, who had died of drink, and of his plan to kill the skipper, the squire, and the doctor once the treasure was found. Jim was terribly afraid he would be found out, but just then a cry rang out that roused the entire ship, for in the moonlight land had been sighted. The next morning, under Long John Silver's expert guidance, he claimed he had visited the island before on a trading ship. The Hispaniola found a safe anchorage in an almost landlocked channel to the south of the island. Jim secretly warned Captain Smollett, the squire, and the doctor of Long John Silver's treacherous plan. The captain said that for the time being they should pretend they knew nothing. As there were only 7 of the 26 people aboard the ship that they could rely upon, the odds were stacked against their survival. Jim remarked that the treasure island had a brooding, menacing air. He didn't know about treasure, said the doctor, but it was a pound to a penny that malaria lurked in the island's steamy marshes. Now that the ship was at anchor, the crew became very agitated and surly. Fearing they would mutiny straight away, Captain Smollett told them they could take the rest of the day off. Long John Silver, who had done his best to calm things down, led a party of sailors ashore, but 6 of their number were left aboard to guard the ship and keep an eye on the captain and those who were not part of the treacherous plot. Acting more on instinct than anything else, Jim hid himself aboard the boat that rowed ashore, and as soon as the coast was clear, made a run for the shelter of the nearby undergrowth. He was delighted that no one appeared to have seen him, and soon began to enjoy the unfamiliar feeling of being all on his own. An hour or so later, Jim was surprised by voices. He hid and watched as, a little way off, Long John Silver tried to persuade a number of the crew to join the mutiny. When the fellow refused and started to walk away, the old pirate drew a long knife and stabbed him in the back. Terrified, Jim slipped away and ran for his life. He ran until his legs gave out. Then, when he stopped to catch his breath, he found himself facing a wild-looking man, dressed all in rags. "I am poor Ben Gunn," said the wild man, "and I haven't spoken with a Christian these 3 years." Ben Gunn told Jim he had been on Captain Flint's ship when the treasure was buried. The wicked pirate had taken 6 men ashore with him to hide the booty, and murdered them all, so its location remained a secret. Ben had returned on another ship to look for the treasure 3 years back, but when they could not find it, his shipmates left him marooned on the island. Meanwhile, the doctor, the squire, and Captain Smollett had also decided to go exploring. Unbothered by the 6 pirates who had been ordered to stay on board, they took the ship's jolly boat and rowed ashore. They soon found what was known as the stockade, a sturdy log cabin with loopholes for muskets in its walls, protected by a perimeter fence of stout wooden paling 6 feet high. They decided this was as good a place as any to make a stand against the pirates, and hurried back to the Hispaniola for supplies. While the squire's gamekeeper, Red Ruth, kept the pirates at gunpoint, the captain and the others made several journeys ashore with provisions, arms, and ammunition. On the final trip back to the stockade, the captain, the squire, and the doctor, along with those still loyal to them, were attacked by more of the pirates. The pirates lost 1 dead and 2 more injured, but Red Ruth was also shot and died soon after. The pirates who had retreated started a bombardment from the ship's cannon, but as the stockade was out of the Hispaniola's sight, the balls fell well wide of their mark. Jim and Ben Gunn were surprised by the sound of distant cannon fire. Jim told Ben about Long John Silver and the pirates and asked him to go with him to find his friends. Ben shook his head. He said that he knew Long John Silver from way back when they were both members of Flint's crew, and added that if Jim's friends gave him a promise of a safe passage home, then he would help them. With that, he slipped away into the undergrowth.
You are listening to Audio SSLC, your audio medium for easy understanding and revision.
To download a copy of this recording, please visit audiosslc.com. When evening fell, the pirates stopped their useless bombardment. Jim approached the stockade cautiously, but when he saw the Union Jack flying above it, he knew that it was his allies who occupied it. Jim's friends were delighted to see him safe and sound, and amazed to hear about Ben Gunn. The captain then told everyone it was time to sleep. Along with him, the squire and the doctor, there were just 2 more of the squire's men, plus 1 sailor, who had remained loyal. 6 men and a boy against the 15 pirates who still survived. The next morning, Long John Silver appeared at the stockade's perimeter fence, carrying a flag of truce. He offered to spare the defenders' lives if they gave him the treasure map. Captain Smollett refused him point blank, saying the pirates' word was not worth a rotten ship's biscuit, and that they had no intention of giving up the treasure map anyway. No sooner had Long John Silver hobbled angrily away than the pirates attacked the stockade. The defenders retreated into the log cabin, from which they exchanged musket fire with the pirates. Suddenly, several attackers swarmed over the perimeter fence. 2 were shot down, 1 retreated, but 4 of them made it to the cabin wall, where they were able to shoot in through the building's loopholes at will. Realizing the tables had been turned, the defenders rushed outside and fought the pirates hand to hand. A few minutes later, the pirates lay dead, but 2 of the squire's men had perished as well, and the captain was wounded. While the remaining defenders buried the dead, the doctor made his way off into the woods, intent on a secret plan. Jim, too, had an idea. With darkness approaching, he armed himself with a pistol and slipped away into the shadows. He made his way to the seashore, where he found a small homemade boat that Ben Gunn had told him about, The little craft closely resembled a coracle and was very difficult to handle. But he succeeded in padding it out to the Hispaniola, from which drunken, shouting voices could be heard. Jim wasted no time cutting through the ship's mooring ropes and setting it adrift. By that time, the tide was ebbing fast, and the current in the channel was very strong. Jim found himself swept helplessly along with it. Thinking he was as good as dead, he allowed exhaustion to overwhelm him. The next morning, Jim awoke to find himself drifting near to the island's north coast. Close by was the Hispaniola, seemingly deserted. He hurriedly paddled over to it and clambered aboard. On the ship, Jim found the two pirates whose raised voices he had heard the night before. They had obviously had a fight. One lay dead, the other had a bad wound in his thigh. Jim took the ship's wheel and steered for a creek in the north of the island, where it could safely be run ashore. The surviving pirate, who minutes before had seemed to be gravely wounded, suddenly sprang at Jim. As the ship ran gently aground, the pirate chased Jim up the mainmast's rigging and threw a knife at him. Although Jim was slightly wounded, he managed to aim his pistol and shoot his attacker dead. Very pleased that he had captured the ship and it was in a safe place, Jim made his way back to the stockade, but to his horror, it was Long John Silver and the pirates who greeted him. For some reason, the doctor had given it up to them, along with the treasure map. Long John Silver told Jim that as he had deserted his friends, he should now join the pirates, but Jim refused. Jim said that, after seeing so much treachery and blood, he no longer cared what happened to him, but he wanted the pirates to know that it was he who uncovered their plot, and it was he who took the ship. The other pirates wanted to kill him, but Long John Silver was impressed by his brave speech and told his men the lad would be far more use to them as a live hostage than a dead cabin boy. Long John Silver whispered to Jim that with the ship gone, he was in a desperate pickle. He gave Jim to understand that if he were given the promise of lenient treatment, he would be prepared to surrender to Captain Smollett. The pirates, meanwhile, were very angry at losing so many men and being marooned, and gave Long John Silver the black spot. On its other side was the word deposed. And who doomed the mission to failure? The one-legged pirate yelled at them. If they had waited until after the treasure was found before mutinying, then by now they would all have been rich. A little later, Dr. Livesey appeared under a flag of truce and treated the wounded men and those who were now suffering from malaria. He was allowed a few words with Jim, who told him all about taking the ship. The doctor replied he had done very well, most especially in finding Ben Gunn. Before leaving again, he warned Long John Silver to beware of squalls when digging up the treasure. After breakfast, the pirates set off to find the treasure, taking Jim, who was tied to a rope, along with them. Jim was still very puzzled as to why the doctor had given the pirates both the stockade and the treasure map, but he supposed it must have been part of some plan. At length, following the directions of the treasure map, the pirates reached a clearing in which they found a sun-bleached skeleton. Suddenly an eerie voice rang out, singing, 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. Terrified, the pirates stopped dead. Even Long John Silver looked frightened, but then he told his men that ghosts' voices did not echo like that. And anyway, ghosts or no, nothing was going to keep them from their booty. The pirates moved on again and eventually caught sight of the giant tree that marked the spot where Captain Flint had buried the bulk of his treasure. Long John Silver's eyes gleamed with greed, and Jim knew that any promises he had made were now completely forgotten. Then the pirates let out a gasp of dismay, for under the tree was a gaping hole in the ground that had obviously been dug several months ago. The despairing pirates dug the earth at the bottom of the hole with their bare hands, but the treasure had gone. Then they turned on Long John Silver and Jim, accusing them of treachery. But before they could do them any harm, a volley of gunshots rang out. 2 of the pirates fell to the ground, dead. The remaining 3 turned and ran for their lives. Dr. Livesey, Squire Trillaway, and Ben Gunn stepped out of the nearby undergrowth, their muskets still smoking. The doctor told Jim and Long John Silver that they had only reached them in time, because Ben had held the pirates up with his ghostly song. As they made their way to Ben Gunn's cave, where Captain Smollett was recovering, the doctor explained how he had gone to find Ben Gunn. When he learned that Ben Gunn had already found the treasure and taken it to his cave, and also saw that the ship had vanished, he gave the pirates the treasure map, which was now useless, and let them have the stockade, where he was sure they would go down with malaria. Over the next few days, those who were still fit enough loaded all treasure onto the Hispaniola, which was easily refloated on a high tide. The captain on the road to recovery said that because they were so short-handed, they should sail to the nearby Spanish Americas to take on more men. The 3 surviving pirates were left on the island, a much more humane punishment than that they had planned for their victims. As the Hispaniola sailed away, one of them shouldered his musket and put a ball inches over Long John Silver's head. On reaching the mainland, more crew were taken on. Long John Silver managed to slip off board, taking with him some 400 in coin. Everyone was relieved to see the last of him. The journey back to England passed without incident. The expedition's survivors all received an ample share of the treasure, and while the rest used their money wisely, Jim learned that Ben Gunn was poor again within the month. Jim never had the urge to go to sea again, especially not to Treasure Island, although it was said that some of the treasure still remained undug there. In his worst nightmares, he would dream of the surf breaking over the island's rocks, and Captain Flint's shrill cry, "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8. Glossary: Cove, a small bay. Wizened, reduced in size because of old age. Saber scar, a scar on the face caused by a heavy sword with a curved blade. Sea chest, a large wooden box commonly used by sailors. Sallow, pale and yellowish, not healthy. Lubber, awkward, clumsy fellow. To do for him, to kill him. Unwittingly, without being aware of. Fugitives, those who were running away from them. Moor, to attach a ship to an anchor. Buccaneer, a pirate. Schooner, type of ship with 2 or more masts. Squawking, croaking. Coxswain, a petty officer in charge of a boat. Brooding, threatening. Marooned, verb, abandoned in the island. Perimeter, boundary around an area. Hobbled, walked. Musket, an early type of gun with a long barrel. Coracle, a small light boat. Clambered, climbed with difficulty. Have the odds stacked against. Unlikely to succeed because conditions are not favorable. Creek, a narrow stretch of water following in from a coast. In a pickle, in a difficult, unpleasant situation. Squalls, violent cries or quarrels. Note on the author. The original novel, a romance, was written by Robert Louis Stevenson, 1850 to 1894, a gifted storyteller. He wrote several travel stories and well-loved novels like Kidnapped, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Black Arrow, etc. It is said that Treasure Island was written for amusement of his 12-year-old stepson. This simplified and abridged story would surely encourage you to read the much more entertaining original novel.